Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for reminding me how old I am. So my presentation is going to be a little bit different than everything you've heard today. I'm not going to tell you how to protect your business. I'm going to tell you what we're seeing that's affecting your business. Also, give you a little history of myself, our unit, and where we're going in the future. So again, my name's Donna Gregory. I'm the unit chief of the Internet Crime Complaint Center with the FBI's Cyber Division. As she had mentioned, I've been with the IC3 for 22 years. So I came on board when it was a pilot project. We were at that time called the Internet Fraud Complaint Center. We were an online portal to collect information from the public. Everybody said, this internet thing's a fad, you're gonna go there, it's not gonna work. 22 years later, I'm still here. So it's changed a lot. When we first started, we had dial-up internet. I barely knew how to use it and even send an email. We did a lot of our internet cyber stuff on paper. We printed it all out and looked at the complaints. The top two things we were seeing were, well, mainly it was eBay fraud. We were seeing counterfeit Beanie Babies, and we were seeing laptops and computers being sold and not receiving. We say now, looking back 22 years ago with cyber now, we would love to just see counterfeit Beanie Babies. So a lot of changes over the 22 years. So let's get into, okay. So the IC3 is a public-facing website to collect complaints from victims, but as well as private sector. There's not been a lot of changes in our website over the past 22 years. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, what we're doing to sort of get with the times. Of course, we're the government, so we're always about 10, 15 years behind on everything. We partner also with other law enforcement. We partner with private sector companies to collect the data and then to also interact and do collaboration. Because we're the government, we don't give you anything, but we will take all your data. But we do collaborate to try to at least share indicators to where we can help prevent fraud in the future. We also have public service announcements, industry alerts, different things that we put on our website. All of those are TLP white, available for the public. So those are posted on our webpage as well. A lot of good information. The industry alerts have a lot of indicators that may be helpful to your businesses, so I would encourage you to look at that information. One of the other things we do, we take that data, look at it, look for trends. We're looking for case support, of course, but also linking information together. When we look at cybercrime, there's two different pieces. The way the FBI looks at cybercrime is the cyber piece is more threats and intrusions. The cyber-enabled crime is more criminal. Because we have both pieces at IC3, the staff in my unit are both criminal FBI employees as well as cyber, because we see that overlap. A lot of that is with following the money. We see the same ransomware account holder also receiving romance scam transactions. So tying that together, following the money, and developing those cases. We also offer remote access. It's only for law enforcement to come into our data to where they're looking for certain information, or they're wanting to see what's going on in my area or my state. The IC3 is actually located in West Virginia. It is a state. It's beside of Virginia. And we are about 3 hours from DC, which is great because we're not in DC. So that makes life a lot easier, especially since my boss is in DC. So the life cycle of a complaint. What happens to a complaint? When you file that complaint, it comes in. We have certain algorithms set up to push that complaint to where it needs to go. Because we're public facing, we get complaints on everything. A lot of them have nothing to do with cyber, not even have anything to do with the internet. But we get those complaints because we are public facing. Because we also get complaints from all over the world. So we get complaints from Canadian victims. We get complaints from, I think last year we figured there were 69 countries we got complaints from. So we do have a lot of data in our system. For 2021, if you look at the stats, if you add from where we get the biggest piece of our information, of course, is from the general public through our website. Almost 850,000 complaints last year. 112,000, I think that's what that says, came from other entities. We get information from the Federal Trade Commission, the National Center for Disaster Fraud, which is located in Louisiana, and also from our National Threat Operations Center. That's an FBI call center. So when you call the FBI, you don't really get the office you called from, you get a call center. If it's related to the internet, they push that information to us as well. Then when you look at what did we send out? When you look at the total and you say 6,700 incidents were sent out, that's not very much out of 1 million complaints. Well, that is, an incident can contain thousands of complaints. It can contain one complaint, it can be a whole package of complaints. So when we look at that and we look at what do we send out, the majority of what we do send out is cyber. Because we are focused, we're a cyber unit, we're focused on cyber, we're focused on those threats that we're seeing on the cyber side. The criminal side is a little harder to work on because a lot of that is financially motivated, but it's also complaints that maybe don't reach a threshold, the counterfeit Beanie Babies. If we have 1,000 counterfeit Beanie Baby complaints, we might send it out, but we're looking at bigger cyber threat incidents. So this is from our 2021 annual report. When you look at the victim complaint data, phishing was the number one, and non-payment, non-delivery. That's where you sold something or bought something and didn't receive it. Those are the top two by volume from the victims. The BEC, if you notice, is number 9, and investment is number 8. So when we start looking at the dollar losses associated with those, you see business email compromise, I think you guys call it CEO fraud, is number 1 in monetary losses. The second one you're going to see is investment scams. In 2022, we're going to see those losses flip. Investment scam is the number 1 complaint that we're seeing right now. And these are investment scams which they've been dubbed as pig butchering. If you don't know what pig butchering is, it's something they do in Iowa. And no, it's seriously, they target a victim through a friendship or confidence scam or a romance scam and keep working with them to invest in cryptocurrency until they either get all their money or they give them their wallet. Then all their money's gone, they take it, no sign of them. We're seeing them provide them apps to download so they can keep track of all the money they're investing and look at that growth, and then turn around, since it's a good friend, I'm just gonna give you my wallet. Here, you can just take my account and go ahead and invest it. A few minutes later, everything's gone, your app doesn't work, and you're out however much money you invested. So that is the number 1 complaint we're seeing right now. They're even training, especially in the elderly, we're seeing them give them more of a tutorial of how to use a virtual currency ATM. They'll walk them through the instructions, how to move the money, where to send it. So there's a lot of this investment that is happening with the elder fraud. So what's trending besides the pig butchering? Ransomware, of course. That's something we don't see a lot of complaints on, but we are seeing that on the rise, and of course that's one of the main things, as you've heard all day today, that we're focusing on. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, as well as the business email compromise and the CEO fraud. Elder fraud is an initiative that we're working with the U.S. Department of Justice on. We're seeing about 100,000 complaints just coming to us against victims over the age of 60. We do not see elderly as the primary target. I think it's just, all scams, they're going to get whoever they can get. But because the elderly are more trusting, we find that they will fall for these scams a little better, or they're not technically savvy. So they're trusting, or they don't really know what they're doing, so they invest or provide funds more than those that are younger. The tech support customer service. So at first we saw tech support as just a pop-up on your screen, there's a virus, call Microsoft and we'll fix it, and then you let them in, and then they can take whatever or charge you $39.95 for the rest of your life. What we're seeing now is more of a shift to customer support, and it's not just for technology. We're seeing them use businesses, financial institutions, travel companies, whether it's airlines, car rentals, online stores, anything that you would do a search to find a phone number, they will spoof that number. You call the number, and of course you think you're talking to that business, but you're talking to a call center. Usually those call centers are in India, and then you're providing them your information, either to take over your account or to allow them into your computer or into your phone to then take that information. We are seeing that growth by, let me just check my numbers here. So we saw a 37% increase last year. It's about a 55% increase in reporting this year. We've already seen a $146 million loss just reported to IC3 on the tech support and customer service complaints. So the DOJ elder fraud. As you look at the complaints that have come into IC3, of course the losses, the amounts, 60 plus seems to be the higher number. And then addressing those, every field office in the FBI throughout the United States has an elder justice coordinator, and each U.S. Attorney's Office has one as well. So they're really focusing on these. We've actually had successes with cases because where I said they're not targeting the elderly, but if you have a case and there's like 5 elder victims and 100 other ones, use those 5 elder victims to really push that case across, because the U.S. Attorney's Office is really pushing that information and helping with those prosecutions. So the domestic kill chain. There are 2 processes that we have at IC3 with the business email compromise. So when a complaint comes into the IC3 and it's within a reasonable amount of time, usually 3 days or sooner, that money has been wired to where it doesn't need to go, there's 2 different processes. So we started out several years ago with what we called the financial fraud kill chain. That it was for transactions when a U.S. victim sent money to an international account. So what we set up was when that complaint comes into IC3, we would automatically work with our 24/7 watch command and also work with FinCEN to get that information out to the banks in the other countries and hopefully freeze those funds. It was working very, very well, so we started seeing a shift, and they were using money mules or accounts in the U.S. from U.S. banks to U.S. banks. Because that didn't meet the criteria for a financial international kill chain, the best we could do at that time was just to send it to the field office, ask the FBI agent, get with the company, and then, or contact the bank, let's see if we can get that money stopped. The success rate in doing that was about 30%, because by the time they either decided to read their email or they didn't know who to contact. You know, you get a bank and you don't know who at that bank am I supposed to talk to, and it could be clear on the other side of the country. So those success rates were very, very small, 30% success rate in getting that money back. So what we set up in our office in 2018 was the domestic kill chain. Complaint comes in, goes in our database, it goes straight to a team that looks at that information, gets it out to law enforcement, but also gets it out to the bank. And that will happen within seconds from the time you hit the submit button. So I allowed my team to name themselves. So they are the RAT team, the Recovery Asset Team. What we do is work with the banks, set up a rapport with different financial institutions, and as soon as a complaint comes in, we reach out to the bank and provide them that information. If the complaint is not completed correctly, we're not going to reach out to the bank. We are getting so many complaints in that you have to provide us that information. We have businesses that refuse to give their bank account number. They gave it to the bad guy, they didn't have a problem with that, but they don't want to give it to law enforcement for us to work with the banks. So it's sort of like, well, I'm sorry, move along, we're going to go to the next guy that can do it correctly. We've had great success with that. Just in 2021, there were 1,700 incidents reported. Even though we had 19,000 BECs reported, 1,700 of them met the criteria for a domestic kill chain. Froze $328 million out of 443, which, if math is done correctly, 74% success rates. We went from a 30% to a 74%. As of last week, since we started this in 2018, my team of 5 people have successfully frozen $1.5 billion. So great. Yeah, the team's wonderful. So they work really hard, especially for 5 people. Good thing the banks in the U.S. are not open on weekends because we do this Monday through Friday. But by also building that rapport with the banks, instead of having 56 agents reaching out to the bank, now you got 5. You got 5 people talking to them, so you're building trust. We're also getting the banks that they may identify an account, they reach out to us, so we have that information that we can start looking at. They're not as easy as just pushing the information out to the bank. We see hops, so a lot of hops. We've seen up to 8 hops, money going from one bank to another bank to another bank. The banks are very cooperative to provide us, well, it went from this bank A to bank B, and there's the account number, and then we'll reach out to bank B, and they were like, no, you got to go to bank C. What we're starting to see now is usually in the second to third hop, it transfers to virtual currency. So a little more challenging. We're now working with the virtual currency companies, some of them, and trying to do the same thing. We have had successes in freezing some of the virtual currency accounts, but as we all know, it moves so fast. The regulations are a lot different, and so time's of the essence. You know, that's what we tell people. If you're a BEC victim, file it right away. If you don't let us know, we're not going to be able to help you. We have recovered funds up to 2 weeks, but those have usually been $500 million or higher. So we will try, and we don't only do it for just BEC, we do it for anything. You buy a Lamborghini off of the internet, and the next day figure out it was fake, or you sent the money to the wrong person, file the complaint, you got the information there, we're going to work to try to stop that money and get it back. So it's not just businesses, but it's also individuals. We see a lot in the US where it's you're purchasing a home, you take your title company sends you an email, tells you where to wire the money, you take your life savings to make your down payment on your house, you wire it only to find out it wasn't your title company. And you're responsible, you just lost your life savings and your down payment on the house. We've recovered a lot of money for those individuals, even though they're smaller amounts. Those are really what's important. When you can help the general public and help, the 75-year-old woman that was buying her dream home in Florida and get her money back that makes you feel good. The business, not that it doesn't make you feel good when a business loses $1 million and you get their money back, but the individual is, a lot more traction there, and being able to help the public is very important. Okay, our favorite subject, ransomware. Of course, it's not the new threat, it's just the hot threat right now. We have seen from last year's reporting over the previous year, 50% increase in reporting to the FBI. We do ask companies to report to the FBI so we can help you. We're not going to provide your information to the public. We're not going to provide it to your competitor. We're here to try to get the bad guy, but to also mitigate your risk and help you get back into business. The losses have increased 449%. Now, that isn't just making payments. Of course, the FBI always says, don't pay the ransom, but that is up to the company as what they want to do. But it's also the cost associated with getting your company back up and running. So that money, those increases since 2019 are tremendously high. So what do we do when we're looking at cyber reporting? So true cyber reporting, this is just 6 months of this year. The complaints that we have received, and this is just from private sector, this is not from individuals, we have received, in the first 6 months, the number one was ransomware, 876 complaints. As I said, just against the private sector that have filed with IC3. All of these complaints, there's 1,818, if you add all this up together, complaints in the IC3 database in the first 6 months that we sent out to the field office to open investigations. The number two, of course, we're seeing data breaches. So anytime we get any cyber threat, whether it's an insider threat, whether it's a botnet, ransomware, any of the cyber indicators, we're going to send that out to our field offices and our cyber offices. We will also, if it's not in the US and it's a company, say it's a company from Canada that files with us, we will also work with our Canadian counterparts. We work with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. We also work with NC3, who sounds like they took our name, but put an N in front of it. But we work with them as well as our legal attaché within the U.S. Embassy to try to mitigate those threats and get that information out. So when we take these numbers, one of the things the FBI is really focusing on is critical infrastructure. So we're looking, not that one person's business is more important than another, but we're really focusing on that critical infrastructure. We work with CISA in the US. In the US, there's not, I don't know if in Canada, there's a mandated reporting if your business has been affected. Right now, there isn't in the US. They're working towards, there was a directive signed off by the White House to report, and to report to CISA. They haven't decided what to report and where to report it yet, but we are working very closely with CISA to, when we receive information, to get it to them as well, because they can provide resources to those victims. You know, FBI is looking, our goal is to get the bad guy and, you know, open an investigation. CISA will also help you in mitigating some of those risks and the factors associated with the crime. But when you start looking at the critical infrastructure, out of those 1,800, let's see, what was the number? 791 of them, or 44% of them, were affecting critical infrastructure. So those are the ones that CISA is really focusing on. We had 13 of the 16 critical infrastructure reported within that 6 months. The only two we didn't get was dams and nuclear. So not to say they haven't reported and they haven't been a victim of a cybercrime, they haven't reported to IC3. When you look at these, the top two that we've seen, financial services, healthcare, and public health being the top two. In those, data breaches is the most common threat with the financial institutions, sort of makes sense. The second is ransomware with the healthcare. That incorporates in the healthcare sector, you know, hospital, any emergency responders. So when we see a ransomware, it's hitting one of the two that we see the primary are your healthcare sector, also your, what I think it's called government facilities. That's also education. So universities, K through 12, seem to be easy targets for ransomware. So we're seeing those types of infrastructures being hit more than others. So where are we going? As I said, the IC3 hasn't really changed a lot. We've changed our website look a couple different times. If anybody here has filed a complaint with IC3, we have this big, long complaint form. It was set up to try to make it as easy as possible, but with times have changed, we are also trying to redesign that. We have probably the end of the month, the first of the month, we're having a redesign of our website. It's just going to be a prettier, friendly looking website. We're also going to segment our complaint form a little bit. It's the same fields, just in a different user experience. And but the next phase is really going to be, how do we collect the information for what we need? There's been a lot of, we've tried over the years to do things like decision trees to get people to put the right type of information in. Because we're dealing with the general public, it is very complicated. People can't put their name in the name field. Ask for a bank account number and they give you a phone number. It's just very challenging to get people to put the information in the right field. Or putting information in fields where you don't need to put the information in. So, you know, how do we enhance the user experience for the public, but then do we need to have a standalone for the private sector? Because the private sector is going to be more apt to put in the correct information, or at least better than the public. But also challenges of critical infrastructure. What critical infrastructure do you fall under? You can't just ask somebody. You're the IT guy at the hospital, and your hospital just got hit with ransomware. We asked you, what critical infrastructure do you fall under? They're going to say IT, because they're the IT guy. They're not going to really look at that. So how do we get that right information in? But then also, once we get all this different type of information in, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to get it to the right people that needs to see it? So we have a lot of stuff going on. Hopefully phase 2, which is going to be the more enhanced redesign with different types of collection pieces and getting that information where it needs to go, is going to probably take a year. They think it's going to take 6 weeks. A year is probably not even right, but we're going to go with that. The people that haven't really dealt with websites and data privacy and all the technology on the back end just think it's easy to just push a button and it all works. So, but we are moving forward and trying to enhance our collection and also the experience for both users, whether it's private sector or whether it's individuals. And actually, I think I'm done. Oh, no, I'm not. So I talked a little bit about the products that we post on our website. Those are available, like I said, under the industry alert page, but also the consumer alert page. The reason we separated them is because some of the technical verbiage in the industry alerts totally confused the general public, and they didn't know what, they thought they were a Log4j victim. And so we separated that to where focusing more general public to focusing on industry. Because in the US we are in a midterm election cycle, we're posting several election-related public service announcements that are coming out at like one a day. But I strongly suggest familiarize yourself with that. We also push out TLP green, amber, red products through our Cyber Watch command. Those only go to selected or trusted partners. If in Canada, I don't know if the League app pushes those out or how they come out depending on the group that you're associated with. But that's one of the things we're looking at our redesign is how can we have that user experience to where certain members can come in and actually look at that, look at those pins, flashes that are being set for a particular audience. One of the other things is looking at our data. I mean, you can't look at our data, but if you can look at trends, if you're wanting to see, what's affecting ransomware in healthcare, you can see those numbers, have a dashboard to where private sector is actually going to be able to log in and look at that information. Or do we just have it out there for anybody that can look at it? So those are some of the things that we're dealing with in the upcoming future. We are talking to several private sector groups to try to get your opinion of what would you like to see, what's important to you. So a lot of feasibility studies are going to go into this, and a lot of, but I'm optimistic that it's going to turn out, maybe not as good as they think, but it's going to turn out pretty good. But it will be a couple years down the road. As far as that, I think I'm pretty done. Does anybody have any questions since we've got a few minutes left?
What's your recovery rate once stolen funds hit blockchain or virtual currency? You mentioned the traditional banks what your recovery rate. Once it hits the blockchain.
I don't have exact numbers on that, but if I was to guess, probably 10%. It depends on the company. It goes the virtual currency company. Yeah, a lot of variables, but it's usually not very good.
What are the skill sets or training or courses you need to take to join you?
So to actually be part of like a collaboration, is that what you mean, or to be part of the FBI?
No.
Oh.
The recovery and the investigation and all.
Okay, so I mean, as far as providing data, anybody can do that. To be part of the team that works on the recovery, I mean, internally, of course, it's FBI employees. But if you're a financial institution and you want to be part of this team, talk to me afterwards, and I'm happy to include you in that information. Since you guys are on this side of the world instead of down in the U.S. We might have to go through our legal attaché and how to do that. But we're always looking for other companies as to how we can work with our data or even the Canadian data to help your company identify trends, but also, do recovery as well.
But just from a technology skills perspective, what kind of skill sets do you have?
So internally, I mean, for collaboration, it's more data driven, not really technical expertise. Of course, the FBI has their own IT area and that type of information, but as far as your company, depending on the company, the infrastructure it's for, whether it's indicators or things that you're sharing, there just has to be, the ability to gather that information or utilize what information we push back. So it just depends. I can't really answer that, sorry. Yes?
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, if you investigate, let's say, particular ransomware type of investigations, do you have like a ratio of people that you actually catch? Do you have that type of ratio or percentage?
So, I mean, there's a lot of investigation going on very different variants. When we're dealing with the ransomware, that's what we're trying to do is, link it to what variant it is, but also there's certain field offices in the FBI that are focused just on that variant. So if we see a flock bit, we're going to push that information to them to start looking at the data, maybe reaching out to, having your field office reach out to you to see whatever indicators you can push back to them. As you know, an investigation takes forever, but there's a lot of moving parts to it. But with the ransomware specifically, we are looking at the organized groups that are doing this. Just getting somebody that's selling the ransomware as a service or whatever. I mean, yes, that's important, but we want to go after the big fish that are behind it. Pardon? Yes. I mean, there's. And usually, I mean, there's a lot of warrants for people, but they're in other countries where we can't get them back. So we may catch the individuals, but a lot of times, can't extradite them or it can take years to extradite them. But we can sometimes stop at least that, that variant. But of course, then there's one waiting to take over when that one shuts down. Yes.
As per my desk research, it's more about more than $10 trillion that's outside on the blockchain and into any kind of coins, altcoins, and similar technologies. And there are more platforms being created and more money being funneled by my desk research. So, how does your department address these coins and other relevant things, or you just address complaints?
Well, so my unit, yes, just addresses the complaints, but we also support those investigations that are going on, providing, when an office gets, say they do a search warrant and they get a lot of information back, we try to connect the dots with the data that we have. But one of the things, because of the advancement of virtual currency, in January, the FBI set up a virtual currency unit. It's made up of cyber and criminal. Some of the people from my unit are actually on that team, and it specifically is just to deal with virtual currency. So there's a lot of partners. Of course, the bigger trusted, virtual currency partners that are part of that team. We're looking to collaborate a little better, share information back and forth. So we do have those trusted partners that we're working with, but like I said, the virtual currency, with this team only being started in January, it's going to be slow moving. But we're hoping that they have even started on a sharing platform to where, for example, in our office, when we get complaints, people will put the virtual currency wallet in that complaint. We can extract that and provide that as fraud indicators to alert the companies that this is potentially, a bad account. Same way that we do with banking data. So we're working to, to better enhance our partnerships with virtual currency, but it is a challenge right now.
Coming from sort of the private sector, maybe from a more compliance-oriented perspective, I'm just wondering how you guys go about determining liability in this situation, especially with sort of companies that are associated with the banks and the cryptocurrencies and the fintechs, but are not necessarily handling funds, who are operating in good faith and cooperating. Are they, how do you go about determining liability?
Yeah, so, in the US, really there's no liability, even for the banks. The banks aren't regulated to stop the funds. They don't have to do it. We regulate everything else, but fraud money we don't seem to regulate. But those are the same way with the virtual currency companies. A lot of it, it's just good faith and goodwill from the companies, because they realize they're not losing any money. The individuals are losing the money. Now, even they get to the point to where there's certain legal documentations they will make a bank or a client fill out, a hold harmless letter basically saying, you're not making the bank liable or the virtual currency company liable. I know there is some legislation out there to try to change things, but a lot of, the legitimate companies and banks, it's a brand thing as well. Because if I'm banking with, Bank A, and they're not protecting my money or protecting me, then I'm going to go to Bank B. So the banks are really stepping up because they don't want to be regulated as well. But we're seeing the same with the virtual currency companies. Those are really stepping up. Some are actually even making like a 24-hour window before money will be moved, especially if it's going overseas. They're doing that just on their own. I think a lot of times, we're afraid that if we do push regulations, we get people that only do exactly what they're supposed to. Because when you start telling people what to do, you're not going to get the success that you would if they can voluntarily do it.